stunning turn of events tonight for actor and comedian Bill Cosby. He's a free man tonight. It happened just hours after the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned his sexual assault conviction. One of Cosby's attorneys telling ABC News tonight, it's unbelievable. What comes next for Cosby and the outrage from the women who accused him of violating them. The deadly heat wave scorching both coasts, the life-threatening weather sending hundreds of people to the hospital, and concern in America's largest city about power outages. And to the north in Canada, never-seen-before temps reaching 121 degrees. When will the climate change-fueled heat wave end? And tonight, severe storms may be coming next. Our Rob Marciano times it out. The chilling, never-before-seen video shot by a tourist inside the Surfside building just 15 minutes before it collapsed, as crews from all over the world continue to lend a helping hand, trying to find anyone who may still be alive beneath the rubble. Trying to tackle an increase in violence and keep the trust of the community.
They're chasing a suspect with a gun right now.
Our ride-along with police in Oakland, California, as they face the daunting task of keeping the peace.
So personally, if you're processing twice the number of violent crime scenes, does it get to you emotionally?
I try to take it as a different look. I want to help solve things.
The Trump Organization, the namesake enterprise founded by former President Trump and its CFO, expected to face tax charges as early as tomorrow. The Delta variant now in all 50 states. Our report on how to convince more young people to get vaccinated. Bob Woodruff tracking the vaccine for us tonight. And in South Korea, the K-pop revolution. Parents making sure their kids are ready to move and groove and follow their dreams.
So you all want to be K-pop stars? Yeah! You want to be famous?
And good evening, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips in for Lindsay Davis. A stunning turn of events tonight for comedian Bill Cosby, who woke up this morning with up to 8 more years in prison. But tonight, he's at home and a free man. This afternoon, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned his conviction. Just hours later, Cosby, once known as America's Dad, was escorted by his attorney out of the state correctional institution after serving only 2 years of his 10-year sentence, arriving home this afternoon. Cosby's conviction was one of the first high-profile sex assault cases of the Me Too movement. Dozens of women came forward to accuse him, but he was convicted for just one. Throughout it all, Cosby remained defiant, passing up chances at parole or to participate in sex offender programs, saying he would serve his full 10 years instead of admitting any wrongdoing, refusing to express any remorse. Late today, Cosby appeared alongside his attorneys. Cosby didn't say anything, simply flashing a peace sign as they walked away. Tonight, we are also hearing from some of the women who accused Cosby of violating them. Ariel Reshef leads us off tonight.
Tonight, Bill Cosby, a free man, back home, released from a Pennsylvania prison just 12 days shy of his 84th birthday. Moments ago, the comedian speaking to Lindsay by phone.
And nobody had the sense to say, wait 1 second, this doesn't match up with the truth. This is not what I was taught in college. This is not what I was taught at home, etc., etc.
His 2018 sexual assault conviction overturned today by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court after an appeal. Justices ruling he should not have been prosecuted because of a deal with former DA Bruce Castor that he would not be charged if he agreed to testify in a 2005 civil suit brought by accuser Andrea Constand. Their 79-page decision stating, in accordance with the advice of his attorneys, Cosby relied upon DA Castor's public announcement that he would not be prosecuted. But Castor's successor, Kevin Steele, used Cosby's testimony as a key piece of evidence more than a decade later to file criminal charges against the comedian. Cosby later convicted of drugging and sexually assaulting Constant. The court also barring further prosecution against Cosby in the Constant case. Felicia Rashad, who played Cosby's TV wife for more than a decade, and his longtime friend tweeting, "Finally, a terrible wrong has been righted, a miscarriage of justice corrected." While Cosby always maintained his innocence, he was dogged by accusations of drugging and sexual assault from dozens of women. Lindsay sat down with him in 2015 before the Pennsylvania prosecutor brought charges as he prepared to speak to students about the importance of education.
Are you concerned at all that, given the allegations, that may overshadow your message?
It's interesting. This is a situation that's unprecedented. My family, my friends, I have been in this business 52 years, and I've never seen anything like this. And reality is the situation, and I can't speak.
The news of his release today leaving many of his accusers stunned and angry.
I'm concerned that women will think that they shouldn't come forward. I can tell you, as somebody who did, it was challenging, it was scary. There were times when I was called horrible names for saying what I said about him.
And supermodel Beverly Johnson saying in a statement exclusive to ABC News, "Today is a reminder that the fight is far from over. We must continue to support and encourage women who have endured sexual trauma and abuse to come forward despite this outcome."
And we're joined by Ariel Reshef, who's live from Elkins Park, where Cosby is back home tonight. Ariel, his accuser, Andrea Constant, has just released a statement with her lawyers. What does she say?
Well, Kira, Andrea Constant and her legal team have called this decision disappointing and say it's of concern because it could discourage other victims of sexual assault from coming forward and seeking justice. Kira?
Ariel Reshef, thanks so much. Now more reaction from another Cosby accuser, Victoria Valentino. She's the former Playboy model who did not testify at the trial, but says Cosby drugged and sexually assaulted her when she was a young woman. Victoria, very grateful that you're with us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, first of all, how are you feeling right now?
It's been a long day, a very distressing day, a very emotional day, and a very infuriating day. I think all rape survivors have an impotent rage because they are not able to really be listened to, be validated, be vindicated. And we thought when he received his guilty verdict, and when he was taken out in handcuffs in front of us, that we had received justice. We who were beyond the statute of limitations found justice in Andrea Constant's justice. She was our savior because she was the only one of us who was still within the statute of limitations. So we really felt that we had opened the floodgates of the Me Too movement. The Weinstein women who saw that we were not eviscerated and beheaded in the public square began to come forward. We had the hunting grounds, about drug rapists on the college campuses, and the spotlight in the rapes in the Catholic Church. We were on a roll. You know, women and victims of rape and sexual assault were feeling encouraged and empowered and emboldened to come out and speak their truth and know that they would finally be heard and receive justice. And now we've been thrown under the bus.
Wow. So let me ask you, what worries you the most about Bill Cosby being a free man now?
Well, he's emboldened. But the fact that so many people don't understand his pathopsychology. The reality is, when you are a person who has no remorse, when you are a sociopath and have no conscience, which is impossible for a person with conscience to understand or comprehend or even conceive of, you just don't know what to do with that information. And people who have been victimized by people like that are usually empathic people with compassion, people who are kind and loving and forgiving and open. And they are the perfect victims of these kinds of people, like Bill Cosby, who are sociopaths, who are malignant narcissists, who have a pathopsychology that just does not have the normal psychological or emotional reactions that other healthy people have.
So, Victoria,
there is an impotent rage, I think, that we are all probably feeling. You know, when you have been victimized by people like this, you quite often just tuck it away and move on, because there is something inside of you that already says, hey, I'm not going to be believed. I'm not going to have justice. I'm not going to have my day in court. And so you move on and tuck it away. But it impacts every aspect of your life. It impacts your future relationships. It impacts the way you mother your children. It impacts everything in your life. It's like a pebble dropped in a still pond, and those ever-expanding ripples that you don't even know what shore it's going to ultimately reach. You know, we have been impacted, and there is already a generational trickle down. So we need to say whatever the court has made a decision on, we still have to stand together, heart to heart, soul to soul, shoulder to shoulder, and the work must go on. Women are to be believed. So we didn't make this stuff up.
Let me ask you this. Bill Cosby could be, I mean, he's a free man tonight. He could be sitting on his couch, watching this interview, paying attention to all the news coverage. What do you say to Bill Cosby tonight?
I was alone with you in that room, in your little pad up above the strip. And you know who I was with, and you know what you gave me at Sneaky Pete's, and you know what you did.
Victoria Valentino, I know it's not easy to talk about, and I sure appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Well, the legal technicalities here can be a bit tough to understand in a sensitive case like this. So that's why we bring in ABC News legal contributor Shauna Lloyd. She's a civil rights attorney with the Cochran firm. Well, you just heard from Victoria. You've been following all the news that happened today. A lot of people are outraged, Shauna, that Bill Cosby walked free today. But as a civil rights lawyer, help us understand the due process rights here and what the justices were trying to protect.
Absolutely. I think that there are a lot of women that have come forward to accuse Bill Cosby that are going to feel a lot of rage towards this particular outcome. However, the justices were looking at a broader picture when it comes to due process rights. The Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate oneself is one of our fundamental rights. In 2005, when the district attorney Castor looked at this criminal case, he evaluated it and did not feel like he could secure a criminal conviction. With that, he thought to himself that he could possibly, and the victim in this particular case, Ms. Constant, could secure a civil verdict, thereby getting her some justice at that time. The only way he felt that that could happen was if Mr. Cosby would actually testify during his depositions without pleading the Fifth. The only reason he would not plead the fifth is if he took all, and this is DA Castor, took the possibility of having criminal charges brought away. He did that by striking a deal with Mr. Cosby that said, I will not prosecute criminally for this particular instance. Mr. Cosby then relied on that and sat through many depositions without invoking his Fifth Amendment right, which he has the right to have done. Fast forward now to 2015, prosecutors made their case around the testimony in those very same depots. Those depots that he was given a deal he would not be prosecuted against. So the Supreme Court has essentially looked at this and seen that there was a due process violation. The very protection that Mr. Cosby was given from this criminal liability in order to make him testify in the depots was now actually being used against him. And that is the violation, because he would have been able to claim his Fifth Amendment rights within those depots had he not relied on the district attorney Castor. So that is a violation that the Supreme Court identified. And in order to strike the balance when someone's due process rights, everything that's happened thereafter, they look to make you whole. So they're looking at the trials that have happened, the time that have been served, and that is how they came to the conclusion that they would bar any more prosecution for these particular charges.
And Shauna, it's so technical and so complex. Bottom line, it came down to a technicality. In no way, shape, or form is he a free man because he's innocent of the charges, correct?
This happened because there was a violation of the due process, his Fifth Amendment rights. This was a procedural issue, and that's what happens. When there's a procedural issue or anyone's constitutional rights, which we are all vested with, are violated, then it has to be rectified. And that's the court's job, is to rectify and ensure that all of our constitutional rights are not violated, despite who it may be.
As a lawyer, as a woman, does this bother, I mean, tell me personally, does this bother you in any way?
Unfortunately, in these cases, I find that moral law and legal law don't always coincide. And I know that there are many women who took the time, they gathered their strength to step out and to speak about the crimes that they felt Mr. Cosby committed against them. That takes strength and that takes courage. So this particular verdict is going to be very offensive to them. However, as a civil rights attorney, I also understand that our constitutional rights are very sacred to us. And if the state has the ability to override them and trample them, as they do in so many other cases, it's a problem. So they have to take a stance when it's brought to the court that they have to abide by our amendment rights. This is something that should have been addressed when these charges were brought. This is something that they should have been aware of at the time.
Shauna, just quickly, he's a free man and he can't be retried on criminal charges. Why?
Because the Supreme Court decided that what has happened with his violation of his Fifth Amendment rights, the only way to have him whole after having 2 trials and serving jail time is to bar prosecution for these particular charges. So there will be no more charges brought for this particular incident.
Shauna Lloyd, always appreciate your legal counsel and input. Thank you.
Thank you.
So normally sitting in this chair is Lindsay Davis, but I'm filling in for her tonight. However, we asked her to please join us after doing World News tonight because she has been covering this story from the very beginning, and no doubt, I mean, you're the one that put the email out. You found out. We were hustling once we got your email because I think we were in shock. We didn't think this could happen.
You know, I have to say, Kira, I don't think that I was shocked. I mean, today, I didn't know that it was going to happen today. But I think that just to echo, and I couldn't really say it better than Shauna, but that sometimes the law, the legal law and the moral law don't really coincide, is that the idea that I was not shocked, it's not because of the facts, right? but it's because of the letter of the law. And I was there in the courtroom during the pretrial hearing when during the first trial when Brian McMonigal, who was the defense attorney for Cosby during that trial, put Bruce Castor on the stand. And while there was no evidence that there was a written agreement, he said, look, I promised this man, you guys legally cannot prosecute him. And so based on that, that was very compelling. Again, we all know that 2 trials later, he ended up being convicted. But when I watched last year, I think it was the fall, when the Pennsylvania Supreme Court had their virtual hearing, they were questioning. You could tell by the line of questioning and the slant that they were taking when they.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other news.
They may not be buying this. And at that point, I had a conversation with several colleagues thinking, I think that he's going to walk free.
Wow. So you actually thought this moment could come.
I did. Not about whether it's right or wrong.
Right, but the technicality.
Exactly. A deal had been made.
Right. So you have talked to so many of the accusers on the phone up to the last minute. How are they reacting? What kind of message do they think this is sending? I mean, we heard from Victoria, but what are you getting tonight? I mean, you've spent years talking to these women.
Sure, and you and I both talked to Beverly Johnson tonight, and her main concern is that this is going to potentially limit other women, other victims in general of sexual assault, harassment, rape from coming forward. That somehow they'll feel discredited. Somehow they'll feel that because of this outcome, what good will it do? It won't matter. And so in particular, that was Beverly Johnson's main concern. And, I have to say that, again, I was out there on the steps outside of the Montgomery County Courthouse when the women were crying at the end of the hung jury, tears of sadness. Then the flip side, tears of joy when he was convicted. And we've heard from so many already today about their just disappointment and how they were just really blindsided by this possibility.
Well, when you think of more than 60 women have come forward, this was the first case to actually go somewhere and put them behind bars. I mean, I can't
And
even...
the only case that at that time was within the statute of limitations.
So, of course, you got Bill Cosby on the phone today. Are you surprised that you got him on the phone and that he talked to you? Because he wouldn't talk to the cameras. He wouldn't talk to any of the reporters out there in front of his house. But he trusted you. He picked up the phone and you had a conversation.
Sure. I think that he feels vindicated and was glad to express that. He just used the word happy, that he feels very happy tonight. But he also was expressing kind of disappointment with the coverage. And I think that we played a little bit of the clip from the conversation where he said nobody had the sense to say, wait 1 second, this doesn't match up with the truth. And so he did air some of his grievances with journalists and the court of public opinion as well. But the bottom line, that he's happy and he's content back at that home in Elkins Park. His natural residence is in Massachusetts, which is where Camille Cosby is tonight. And so we'll see how long he stays at that Elkins Park home. Incidentally, that's the home where in 2004, Andrea Constand accused him and said that sexual assault took place.
Well, I know we're going to hear a lot more from the accusers, and it'll be interesting to see what Bill Cosby does next. Lindsay, thanks.
I don't think we've heard the end of him.
I agree with that. Thank you. Now to the extreme heat hitting both coasts tonight and the deadly conditions. At least 45 people have died in Oregon, and hundreds of people are in the hospital after days of scorching heat. Here in New York City, emergency alerts went out today urging residents to conserve energy, a power line catching fire, and traffic lights going dark. Rob Marciano joining us now. Rob, that dangerous heat may be giving way to storms as well. When will we see some areas that will have relief?
Well, the Northeast will get some relief, Kira, but we're going to have to deal with some storms ahead of it. We saw records fall in Boston today, 98 degrees. It was 102 in Newark today, hit 100 degrees at LaGuardia Airport. With humidity, it felt even warmer than that. 106 was the heat index at its peak in Philadelphia, where excessive heat warnings are posted. And this heat and humidity just fueling the storms tonight from Pittsburgh to Boston. We've got severe thunderstorm watches up for the next few hours, so we could see some damaging winds with these storms. And then the front that's kind of causing these storms is going to be slowly pushing towards I-95 during the day tomorrow. And as it does so, there'll be several rounds of storms that could bring some damaging winds during the day and some heavy rainfall. But that will bring a little bit of relief from the heat in the Northeast. In the Northwest, the relief has come to the west side of the Cascades, but east of the Cascades, it is still dangerously hot. Excessive heat warnings remain up, it looks like, into the weekend. I can tell you after being there last week, Kira, that heat is unbearable.
Well, talk about unbearable heat. I mean, the heat wave bringing these extreme temperatures, desert-type numbers up to, what, 121 in Canada? What's going on there? And put it in perspective for us.
It's remarkable, really. It has a lot of us in the meteorological community scratching our heads just how warm it got in Portland and Seattle. And in this spot in British Columbia in Lytton, it got to 121. The third day in a row, it set an all-time record. And keep in mind, these are measured in the shade, and this is in Canada. So that's an all-time record for the entire country. Just to give you some perspective here, these are the spots in the U.S., most of them down across the Southwest, of course, where it has reached 121 at any point in time. North Dakota, the one standing out there, but I suspect we'll start to see some of these records begin to creep a little bit farther north. And I should point out, with these well over 40 deaths reported in Multnomah County, that's where Portland is. It's a reminder and it's proof that heat actually is the #1 weather-related killer, and we are seeing that across the Northwest, and it's cumulative too. So as the longer it's hot there, the tougher it is for your body to regulate. So this is certainly dangerous stuff, especially in the Northeast, Kira.
And just when we were getting vaccinated and had the chance to start going outside, we've got to go back inside for our safety once again. Rob, thanks. Now to the latest on that condo collapse in Surfside, Florida. We just learned from officials late today, sadly, 2 more people have died, 2 children, bringing the total now to 18. And we are getting a chilling glimpse tonight also into the moments before the condo came tumbling down. New video shows the situation in the building's garage. Our Victor Condo reports.
Tonight, chilling new video shot just 7 minutes before the deadly condo collapse in Surfside, Florida. Adriana Sarmiento shot the video. In it, you can see water falling into the garage below the building, as well as debris on the ground. She says she tried to alert the residents about the danger.
Weight builds up as you come down the tower. So those columns on the first floor are essentially supporting the entire tower.
And if they're unstable?
If there's an issue with the columns, with the foundations, those are all very critical elements to the stability of the building.
6 more bodies were recovered from the rubble today, including 2 children. 18 people are now confirmed dead. The family of Hilda Noriega was holding on to hope after finding family photos in the debris. Her grandson Michael speaking to David shortly after the collapse.
She was the most loving person that I've ever met in my entire life. I mean, she lived for her family.
Hilda, among the latest victims to be identified. She was 92. And tonight, this haunting call from the night of the collapse. Raisa Rodriguez leaving her brother this voicemail as she ran to safety.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Yanni! The whole pipe is moving on.
She's now suing the Condo Association. 11-year-old Nava Lisman's friend, Lucia, one of at least 7 children still missing.
Lucia was always super, energetic and loving. She was a friend to the entire class.
Lucia's father, Marcus Guada, one of the victims identified, but Lucia, her mom Anna, and younger sister Emma are still missing. Her friends are hoping for a miracle.
After this happened, it has brought a ton of my friends and a lot of my family closer together, because you really do have to cherish every breath, because you never know when it could be your last.
And Victor, your story tugging at our heartstrings, and then the bad weather has hampered the search for possible survivors for days now, and authorities keeping a close eye on the tropics. There's a lot going on, a lot of emotions.
There is, Kira. Right now, officials are keeping a close watch on a tropical system as it churns in the Atlantic. They've also asked for federal help in the event that they need to respond to a storm. Although for now, one assistant fire chief with the city of Miami telling me that the objective is to continue operations for as long as possible unless the weather gets out of control. Kira?
We'll follow it every day with you. Victor Condo, thank you. We turn now to former President Donald Trump's namesake company, expecting to face criminal charges by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office as soon as tomorrow. The Trump Organization and its longtime chief financial officer expected to face charges of tax fraud. The first charges brought by prosecutors following their 2-year investigation of the former president and his company. But will Trump or his children face any legal fallout? Here's ABC's chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl.
ABC News has learned the Trump Organization has been told it will be hit with criminal charges tomorrow by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. The former president is not expected to be charged, but one of his most important and trusted executives, Alan Weisselberg, has been told to appear in court. Weisselberg is the Trump Organization's chief financial officer and has worked for the company since the 1970s. In one of his books, Trump said Weisselberg, quote, did whatever was necessary to protect the bottom line.
Replacing George this week is my chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg. And you think George is tough? Wait till you see Alan.
The expected charges include tax fraud, including allegedly avoiding taxes on fringe benefits, such as apartments, cars, and school tuition. Just yesterday, Trump dismissed the investigation as politically motivated.
I call it the continuation of the greatest and most disgusting witch hunt of all time.
Let's bring in our chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl, now. So, John, as you said, former President Trump is not expected to be a part of these criminal charges, but could he or any of his family members face legal jeopardy down the road?
Well, keep in mind, Kira, this is an investigation that has gone on for more than 2 years, twice battles to the Supreme Court over access to financial records. It's hard to believe that this is the last set of charges in this. This is the first set, likely to be more. Whether or not Trump himself is ultimately charged, of course, remains a very big question. Obviously, the big question also is whether or not Alan Weisselberg would effectively flip and testify against his boss. On that one, you have to keep in mind Alan Weisselberg is somebody who has worked for the Trump Organization for more than 4 decades. I mean, he was a Trump Organization employee back when Donald Trump's father, Fred Trump, ran the company. He is seen as one of the most loyal of Trump's lieutenants.
Well, we've seen alleged loyal lieutenants to the president, such as Michael Cohen. You recently had the interview with Bill Barr, definitely with harsh words, flipping on the president, saying negative things about the former president. What is your sense that the CFO here would actually flip on the president if it meant criminal charges against him?
Well, on one hand, he is, and we'll know tomorrow exactly the extent, he is facing criminal charges for tax fraud, so he definitely has to be thinking about his own future. But this is somebody who goes back with Donald Trump far longer than any of the others. Michael Cohen worked for him for about 10 years. Bill Barr worked in his administration for a couple of years. Alan Weisselberg is the guy that has been right there at his side for as long as he has been the head of the Trump Organization. That is a measure of loyalty beyond any of the others that you mentioned. Getting him to flip would be a mighty tall order for prosecutors, but there's no question that that's the kind of thing they're looking at.
Well, we'll all be watching for sure. John Karl, thanks so much.
Thank you, Kara.
When we come back, K-pop school. Yes, it's a thing and a great source of pride. We'll take you to one in South Korea. But up next, crime is surging across the country. Our team on the ground in Oakland, California, witnessing the crisis firsthand. What are the solutions?
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television. Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back. We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Next to the violent crime surging across America, in California, the Oakland police chief summed it up by simply saying it's out of control. But how do cities and towns fight the spike during a time when police are facing mounting pressures? Matt Gutman goes in depth.
It was the 65th murder that seemed to break something in Oakland's police chief.
Saturday night, I went out to a scene of a young man that lost his life. And a lady yelled out the window, "Do something about it."
We were with the Oakland police that night, racing to that very shooting. Gunshot wound to the head.
I don't want no camera.
Just stay.
Come over here.
At the scene, chaos.
Okay.
Keep walking.
Come over here. Stay with me.
Family members distraught. And Oakland officers on the ground there doing CPR. And from the shadows, you could hear neighbors calling out. The man still had a pulse, and paramedics worked on him even as they loaded him onto the ambulance.
So that gunshot victim shot in the head is loaded into this ambulance. They're trying to back it out of here. It is unclear whether or not he will survive.
Within minutes, the forensics team was there. Those yellow numbered cones covering bullet casings.
How busy have you been this year?
Really busy. Really busy. This is the third one since yesterday afternoon.
The third murder.
Yeah.
It was after 9 p.m. on a Saturday. Still, within minutes of the shooting, Oakland's police chief arrived in uniform. He was briefed by the officers, then came to us, telling us the victim had died.
A city of 425,000, 65 homicides so far this year. How do you explain that?
I don't know how you explain it. It's clear that violence is an epidemic in this community. It's clear that people have too easily access to firearms, and they're overly willing to use them.
Violence exacerbated by the scourge of so-called ghost guns, which are parts of guns purchased online and which can be assembled at home.
So you've seen double the number of ghost guns this year?
Yes, double the number of ghost guns. Also, we are hearing in our community that they are easy to access. And so that makes this job much more difficult. We're unable to trace these firearms. We don't know the origin of them, and we don't know who they're in the hands of.
Citywide, it's the busiest area to work.
We come to Oakland earlier that day to ride along with Lieutenant Lisa Osmus on the so-called dog shift, the late night shift. And just 60 seconds into the start of our ride, the first call crackled on the radio.
They're chasing a suspect with a gun right now.
The man allegedly leaving the gun at or near this park.
Did we find it?
Full of kids.
Is that the right guy that they caught? Yeah.
One of those kids snapped a picture of the suspect, showing it to Osmus. Other officers scoured the scene, but police say they were unable to find it. On this Saturday night, Lieutenant Osmus was in charge of policing half the city. She had only 38 officers for a population of over 200,000 people.
That's probably one of our biggest downfalls in our department is you just don't have the resources to respond to the calls.
Calls like theft and burglary. This past year, Oakland has seen a 90+% increase in homicides. It's just one snapshot of America's new reality. Violence has surged around the country. Sometimes the shootings in heavily trafficked places, like this one in Times Square. A 4-year-old shot in this incident, but more often they happen in the shadows. At the national level, homicides in large cities went up nearly 29% in the first quarter of 2021 compared with the same period in 2020. This, according to preliminary data collected by the Major Cities Chiefs Association. And it's happening as departments like Oakland's are seeing their budgets squeezed. The City Council voting to cut $18 million over the next 2 years and channel part of it to 2 other programs, including $4 million for a pilot program that'll dispatch trained trained personnel to respond to nonviolent and non-criminal issues of mental and behavioral health.
Our policing budget has grown by 70% over the past 15 years, yet we still need to do a better job getting guns off the streets. We need to do a much better job solving violent crimes, and that investment needs to start somewhere.
Oakland's Chief Armstrong agrees that police presence alone cannot stem the tide of violence.
The success of this city will not be just law enforcement. It won't be just the Oakland Police Department. It will be the Oakland Police Department, it will be the Department of Violence Prevention, and it will be, most importantly, community.
But the chief and the mayor say that budgetary diversion could result in the loss of more officers when the department is already more than 70 officers short of its total allotment.
Are you experiencing difficulty in recruiting new police officers?
It's been a challenge, yes. It's been a challenge recruiting. It's also been a challenge retaining officers. In a city this busy, in a city with this level of violence, in a city with this level of scrutiny.
I think we got the scene secure.
Still, even on the dog watch, even at murder scenes, many officers remain committed to their jobs and their mission.
So if you're processing twice the number of violent crime scenes, I mean, does it get to you emotionally?
I try to take it as a different look. I want to help solve things, so if my work on the scene can help lead to a conviction later, then I feel like I've just given that family a little bit more closure for what happened than what they had originally. So to me, I take it that way, and then it doesn't eat me up as much.
And our thanks to Matt Gutman. Still ahead here on Prime, the new warning about domestic terror and violence as we head into the July 4th holiday weekend. And why so many young people are refusing to get vaccinated against COVID and what officials are trying to do to change that. New data on who benefited from online versus in-person learning during the pandemic. The results might surprise you. But first, our tweet of the day. Felicia Rashad, former co-star with Bill Cosby, facing backlash over this tweet defending her friend.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart that he did this.
It's the time of suspicion. The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it? Feel smarter.
feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
24 hours. Assault on the Capitol. The ABC News original. Exclusively on Hulu. Now streaming. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
As America reopens, GMA is celebrating across the country, and tomorrow will be spectacular from the land of tall coffees and even taller trees.
Oh my gosh.
On Good Morning America, Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
We turn now to education and a new report by the CDC finding stark disparities in access to in-person learning during the pandemic. And the results might surprise you. Experts say these learning gaps could last years. We take a look at the CDC data by the numbers. By April 2021, 75% of white children had access to in-person learning compared to 63% of black students and 59% of Hispanic students. This means that on average, white children's access to schoolroom learning during the spring increased by 5% more than black children's access and 14% more than Hispanic children's access. But actually, there was much bigger variance based on region. Nearly 63% of students in the South had access to in-person schooling from September 2020 to April 2021. That's compared to 37% in the Midwest, 22% in the West, and just 16% in the Northeast. And finally, younger students had more access to in-person school learning during the pandemic. In January 2021, 39% of students in grades K through 5th were in school in person. That's compared with 30% of high school kids. And we still have a ton to get to here on Prime. The new charges facing the mother accused of killing her 2 children. And he was Secretary of Defense for 2 presidents. Tonight, we're remembering Donald Rumsfeld. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
How big is the biggest shark fest ever?
They're right here.
It's 6 weeks big. It's multiple places to watch big.
That's a giant shark.
It's Chris Hemsworth diving with sharks big.
Should I be nervous?
Wow. With big action and even bigger premieres.
Here's to the sharks.
With a shark fest this big, you're gonna need a bigger screen. It all kicks off with the premiere of Shark Beach with Chris Hemsworth, Monday at 9 on National Geographic.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Muir, #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast. 2020, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
As America reopens, GMA is celebrating across the country. And tomorrow will be spectacular from the land of tall coffees and even taller trees.
Oh my gosh.
On Good Morning America.
How big is the biggest shark fest ever?
They're right here.
It's 6 weeks big. It's multiple places to watch big.
That's a giant shark.
It's Chris Hemsworth diving with sharks big.
Should I be nervous?
Wow. With big action and even bigger premieres.
Here's to the sharks.
With a shark fest this big, you're gonna need a bigger screen. It all kicks off with the premiere of Shark Beach with Chris Hemsworth, Monday at 9 on National Geographic.
ABC News honored winner for the 2nd straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
This is GMA3, what you need to know. GMA3.
A third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon.
It's all about you. Lunchtime on ABC.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're going to move back. Let's move back. We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True Crime 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Mr. Cosby, how does it feel to be home?
Well,
reuniting with his wife and his children. And obviously, this has been a hard 3 years for this entire family.
Bill Cosby is once again a free man. The 3 sexual assault charge convictions that sent the disgraced comedian to prison 3 years ago overturned today by a Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Justices saying Cosby had been denied a fair trial, the court also barring a retrial.
And even though the court overturned the conviction on technical grounds, it did not vindicate Bill Cosby's conduct.
This serial rapist gets to go home today is just stunning to me. My stomach is lurching and I am deeply distressed.
In Texas, Republican Governor Greg Abbott was joined by former President Trump today for a tour of a section of border wall.
All Biden had to do is go to the beach. If he would have just done nothing, we would have now the strongest border we've ever had. It was even getting better and better and better because it was all kicking in.
Governor Greg Abbott promises to build the wall and pledges $250 million in state money to get it done.
Lori Vallow facing charges in another alleged murder. The 48-year-old awaiting trial for the death of her 2 children has now been charged with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in the death of her former husband, Charles Vallow. In 2019, Lori Vallow's now deceased brother, Alex Cox, killed Charles Vallow in what was originally ruled as self-defense. Police-worn body camera shows officers responding to the scene, even speaking with Lori that day. Prosecutors are now alleging that Vallow, quote, agreed with Alexander Cox that at least one of them or another would engage in conduct constituting the offense of first-degree murder. Lori and her current husband, Chad Daybell, are already facing first-degree murder charges in the deaths of Lori's 2 children, JJ and Tylee.
Miss Daybell is present here.
Lori and Chad Daybell also charged with murder in the death of Chad's former wife, Tammy.
Federal authorities are deeply concerned about the possibility of domestic terror and violence, including mass shootings, as the July 4th holiday approaches and the summer season gets fully underway.
That new Homeland Security bulletin obtained by ABC News warns that extremists may seek to exploit easing COVID-19 restrictions and increase access to mass gatherings to conduct attacks with little or no warning. The official told me last night pandemic stress and the explosive political climate is stoking a perfect storm. While no specific plot targeting Independence Day has been identified, the bulletin ominously warns of evidence of radicals, particularly white supremacists, discussing plans for attacks.
Former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld has died.
Rumsfeld helped oversee the country's response to the terrorist attack of 9/11, and he played a key role in the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq during his 6-year tenure with George W. Bush's administration. He was among those who claimed Iraq was hiding weapons of mass destruction. Decades earlier, he also served as Defense Secretary for President Ford. Rumsfeld family said that he died at home yesterday in New Mexico. Donald Rumsfeld was 88 years old.
The largest fine of its kind levied today against an online brokerage accused of misleading its casual investor customers.
When investors earlier this year egged each other on via social media to buy up garbage stocks like GameStop, they often used the online brokerage Robinhood. That brokerage, which promised to demystify finance for all, has now agreed to pay a nearly $70 million fine to resolve allegations it misled millions of customers and approved trades for thousands of customers who were ineligible to make them. It's the biggest fine ever imposed by the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. Robinhood neither admitted nor denied wrongdoing.
And that's the rundown. Now, as July 4th holiday weekend approaches, the Delta variant has now been identified in all 50 states and in more than 90 countries, a new threat for those who remain unvaccinated, especially younger Americans who've taken the vaccine at lower rates than older adults. ABC's Bob Woodruff with this week's Vaccine Watch.
Tonight, young adults are falling behind in vaccinations. President Biden sounding the alarm in a recent press conference.
That it's more easily transmittable, this Delta variant, potentially deadlier, and especially dangerous for young people.
While vaccinations continue to rise in the United States, the Biden administration will fail to reach their goal of 70% of American adults vaccinated by July 4th. Experts say part of the reason for the lag, young adults.
So right now, the majority of those over the age of 65 have been fully vaccinated, and that has associated to a significant decrease in the rates of hospitalizations and deaths. But one of our weak points right now are in young adults.
Today, only about a third of Americans age 18 to 24 are vaccinated. That age group, along with adults aged 25 to 34, now has the highest rate of COVID-19 infection per capita.
Many people are wanting to wait, wanting to take their odds and hedge a bet on their health. And unfortunately, I am seeing the patients who have lost that bet.
ABC News medical contributor Dr. Darian Sutton says many of his young adult patients aren't worried about the risks of COVID.
Many of my young and healthy patients feel as though they have a very low risk of a negative or poor outcome secondary to COVID-19. And while that is true, I try to remind them that the risk is not zero.
34-year-old Kalina Anderson got COVID earlier this month. She had wanted to get vaccinated, but delayed after coming down with another illness.
I'd wanted to give it enough time for me to be well before I got a vaccine because of possible complications there. But I've wanted to get the vaccine for months, but I keep getting sick.
She's also encouraging other young people to get vaccinated.
This is not a fun disease. It's not something to take lightly.
She's out of the hospital tonight after battling the virus for almost 2 weeks in the intensive care unit. A CDC survey of young people also found that 66% of respondents said they want more information about vaccine safety.
I like to remind patients and people who are deliberating about whether or not they're going to get a vaccine that the research is actually quite expansive. You know, since as early as 2003, during the SARS outbreak, we started this research. There is no such thing as zero risk, but you have to take all of your evidence that you have available and make the best option for you.
Vaccine-rich countries and governing bodies around the globe are trying different methods to encourage young people to get vaccinated. Greece recently made the vaccine available to all adult age groups, and they're using cash incentives to woo young adults.
It's like a prepaid card, and they can use it to buy tickets to travel. They can use it to go to concerts or cultural events. They can use it to go to the museums.
In the U.S., many state and local governments have offered financial incentives to encourage people to get vaccinated. But even that is falling short in some states like Arkansas.
We're continuing the debate about what is the most effective way to do this. But we don't have any really simple silver bullet out there that we can just go, do one thing and then it's going to fix the problem.
Hoping to get more people vaccinated, First Lady Jill Biden using star power, teaming up with NFL Hall of Famer Emmitt Smith in Texas this week.
Choose to get your COVID-19 vaccine. Do it for your health. Do it for your children. Do it for your grandparents and your neighbors. And then we'll all be able to celebrate this holiday, the 4th of July, the way it should be, the way we remember it, safe and together.
I'm Bob Woodruff, tracking the vaccine.
And our thanks to Bob. Now to the exploding K-pop scene worldwide, a vibrant genre that's become so popular, parents are enrolling their kids in K-pop school, hoping for a promising entertainment career. ABC's Seoul Bureau Chief Joo-hee Cho reports.
And grooves, along with singing, are now essential skills to fit into the social media savvy Korean society. And parents here in Seoul's posh Gangnam district make sure their kids are ready for TikTok, YouTubes, and Reels. No one wants to be left behind the K-pop craze.
At first, he didn't like to dance. Oh, no, Mom, I don't like to dance. But after 1 year, he just really fall in Korean dance, and he thinks it's very amazing for him.
The global success of K-pop and the influence of Korean culture worldwide, especially on social media, have become a source of national pride and hope for the future.
think it has changed a lot from, let's say, 10 years ago. There are many parents who didn't want their kids to be entertainers, but now, after the success of K-pop, I think there are a lot of parents introduce their kids to K-pop dancing and singing.
The government education ministry, known for its rigid and conservative values, are also joining in by loosening restrictions on after-school programs to include K-pop classes. This high school receiving an $11 million budget to specialize in K-pop education. Students take classes in all things related to K-pop, dance and choreography, vocal and music writing, learning skills to play with various instruments, all free paid tuition.
The idea is not necessarily to nurture future stars. Realistically, most talented ones are already casted by professional agencies.
The goal here is to train them to be essential workforces in the massive entertainment industry where plenty of jobs are in need. But the glamour and glitz of a star?
So you all want to be K-pop stars? Yeah! You want to be famous? Yeah!
Have all dreaming big early on. Joo-hee Cho, ABC News, Seoul, South Korea.
And our thanks to Joo-hee Cho. Well, we're at the top of the hour now. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Several new developments we're following for you right now. The House of Representatives approving a bill to create a select committee to investigate the Capitol Hill insurrection. Republicans blasting the select committee as too partisan. The only Republicans to vote in favor of the committee, Representatives Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she will appoint members and announce a chair for the committee at a later time. The highly contagious Delta variant has now been identified in all 50 states, and officials are warning cases will continue to climb in areas with low vaccination rates. The Delta variant is the cause for 1 in 4 of all new COVID cases now. Former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld has died at the age of 88, regarded by former colleagues as equally smart and combative, patriotic, and politically cunning. Rumsfeld had a storied career in government under 4 presidents. In a statement, Rumsfeld's family says he was surrounded by family in his beloved Taos, New Mexico. Now to the bombshell news that comedian Bill Cosby has been released from prison after Pennsylvania's Supreme Court overturned his sex assault conviction. The High Court saying he was a victim of a bait and switch by prosecutors. This comes after dozens of women have come forward to accuse Bill Cosby of violating them. ABC's Ariel Reshef reports.
Tonight, Bill Cosby, a free man, back home, released from a Pennsylvania prison just 12 days shy of his 84th birthday. Moments ago, the comedian speaking to Lindsay by phone.
And nobody had the sense to say, wait 1 second, this doesn't match up with the truth. This is not what I was taught in college. This is not what I was taught at home, etc., etc.
His 2018 sexual assault conviction overturned today by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court after an appeal. Justices ruling he should not have been prosecuted because of a deal with former DA Bruce Castor that he would not be charged if he agreed to testify in a 2005 civil suit brought by accuser Andrea Constand. Their 79-page decision stating, in accordance with the advice of his attorneys, Cosby relied upon DA Castor's public announcement that he would not be prosecuted. But Castor's successor, Kevin Steele, used Cosby's testimony as a key piece of evidence more than a decade later to file criminal charges against the comedian. Cosby later convicted of drugging and sexually assaulting Constand. The court also barring further prosecution against Cosby in the Constand case. Felicia Rashad, who played Cosby's TV wife for more than a decade, and his longtime friend tweeting, "Finally, a terrible wrong has been righted, a miscarriage of justice corrected." While Cosby always maintained his innocence, he was dogged by accusations of drugging and sexual assault from dozens of women. Lindsay sat down with him in 2015 before the Pennsylvania prosecutor brought charges as he prepared to speak to students about the importance of education.
Are you concerned at all that, given the allegations, that may overshadow your message?
It's interesting. This is a situation that's unprecedented. My family, my friends, I have been in this business 52 years, and I've never seen anything like this. And reality is the situation, and I can't speak.
The news of his release today leaving many of his accusers stunned and angry.
I'm concerned that women will think that they shouldn't come forward. I can tell you, as somebody who did, it was challenging, it was scary. There were times when I was called horrible names for saying what I said about him.
And supermodel Beverly Johnson saying in a statement exclusive to ABC News, "Today is a reminder that the fight is far from over. We must continue to support and encourage women who have endured sexual trauma and abuse to come forward despite this outcome."
And our thanks to Ariel Reshef. Now to Surfside, Florida. We just learned from officials late today, sadly, that 2 more people have passed, 2 children, bringing the total number of fatalities to 18. And we're also getting a chilling new glimpse tonight into the moments just before the condo came tumbling down. The new video shows the situation in the building's garage at that time. Our Victor Condo reports.
Tonight, chilling new video shot just 7 minutes before the deadly condo collapse in Surfside, Florida. Adriana Sarmiento shot the video. In it, you can see water falling into the garage below the building, as well as debris on the ground. She says she tried to alert the residents about the danger.
Weight builds up as you come down the tower. So those columns on the first floor are essentially supporting the entire tower.
And if they're unstable?
If there's an issue with the columns, with the foundations, those are all very critical elements to the stability of the building.
4 more bodies recovered from the rubble today. 16 people are now confirmed dead. The family of Hilda Noriega was holding on to hope after finding family photos in the debris. Her grandson Michael speaking to David shortly after the collapse.
She was the most loving person that I've ever met in my entire life. I mean, she lived for her family.
Hilda among the latest victims to be identified. She was 92. And tonight, this haunting call from the night of the collapse. Raisa Rodriguez leaving her brother this voicemail as she ran to safety.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Yanni! The whole site is moving on.
She's now suing the Condo Association. 11-year-old Nava Lisman's friend, Lucia, one of at least 7 children still missing.
Lucia was always super, energetic and loving. She was a friend to the entire class.
Lucia's father, Marcus Guada, one of the victims identified, but Lucia, her mom Anna, and younger sister Emma are still missing. Her friends are hoping for a miracle.
After this happened, it has brought a ton of my friends and a lot of my family closer together, because you really do have to cherish every breath, because you never know when it could be your last.
And our thanks to Victor. Now to the major mess in New York and that city primary election. The city's Board of Elections admitting late last night that it mistakenly counted more than 130,000 test votes in its tally for the city's closely watched Democratic mayoral primary, which was using a ranked choice voting method for the very first time. So what exactly is that? Well, let's break it down with ABC News political director Rick Klein. So Rick, first just remind our viewers how this new ranked choice voting system works and what was the goal of using this method?
It's a brand new system. Basically, instead of voting for just one candidate, you vote for 5. You rank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, your 5 selections. And instead of the person winning with the most votes, like 20% in a big field, let's say, you have to get 50% plus 1. And then they go through a whole round of tabulations, and the last place finisher each time drops off. And they redistribute that person's votes until someone gets to 50%. The idea is that rather than just splitting the vote up a bunch of different ways and having someone win with just a narrow slice of the electorate, that the person that wins ultimately is going to be more of a consensus choice. If not the first choice, then the second, third, fourth, or even fifth choice of a majority of New Yorkers. That's the idea in theory, and it was approved by the voters a couple years ago, now being implemented for the first time this year.
And so what exactly went wrong with the count last night? And was this system actually a part of the problem?
this was an unmitigated disaster from the perspective of the Board of Elections in New York. That we always knew that they planned to release an initial vote, not everything, not all the information, not including the absentee votes, about a week after the election. And they did that last night. And it had some really surprising numbers in it. In fact, there was about 100,000 votes that no one knew were even cast. And people were immediately saying, wait, something's wrong here. Then the Board of Elections says, yeah, you're right. There was something wrong. We accidentally included more than 100,000 votes that were tests, that were dummy data that they used to play around with in testing the system. So they were using this data basically because it had never been done before. So in that sense, it wouldn't have happened if not for ranked choice voting. However, it isn't a flaw inherent in the process. It was human error, and it was bad error because they put out this information. It's not just that it tells you nothing. It takes you backwards. It tells you things that are counterproductive to actually understanding how New Yorkers voted a week ago.
So will this mistake have any impact on the final results of the election?
Unlikely. In fact, just tonight, the Board of Elections released the new tallies. It still has the same candidate, Eric Adams, as the front runner, and a tight vote for second and third place, which of course is important as things go on. But we still haven't even seen more than 100,000 absentee ballots, so it's not clear what that even tells us. So we're just going to have to wait for the counting to continue. I think where this has an impact is just undermining voter confidence in the system. Whoever wins, whoever loses, it's going to be hard to make a case that this is a rock-solid victory because of this very major snafu.
All right, finally, you know I have to ask this. We saw former President Trump basically point to this as an example of the type of irregularities that he faced in his 2020 election loss. There's no merit to that. But does this mess in New York play into that narrative of rigged or untrustworthy elections that some Republicans, continue to hammer?
Yeah, Kira, you could see this coming from a mile away. You knew that Donald Trump would pounce on his former hometown, a Democratic-run city, and say this is evidence that no one should ever trust an election. It is beyond apples and oranges. We're not even talking about fruit here. This was a big mistake, and there are mistakes, but that has nothing to do with the false allegations that President Trump has put forward. It does, though, I think, underscore a reality in this country that it's becoming increasingly hard to trust votes and to trust the vote count. And this experiment with ranked choice voting for New York has taken that effort backwards in terms of this particular election reform effort and more broadly. It's going to take a lot of time to restore trust. But as for Trump's claims, absolutely false.
And this is why you are our political director, Rick Klein. Thanks so much.
Do what we can. Thank you.
All right, you bet. Now to major news from the NCAA, a game changer for student athletes as the league's board of directors has cleared the way for them to make money from endorsements and other efforts based on their name, image, or likeness. ABC's Alex Perez has the details.
Tonight, after growing pressure, the NCAA voting to allow student athletes to cash in on their sports success, allowing them to earn money on lucrative endorsements, personal appearances, even autograph signings.
The Baylor Bears, the national champions.
The groundbreaking move comes as 8 states were set to bypass NCAA rules to allow student athletes to make money.
I just always felt that the student athletes were being exploited. They're the workhorses of a billion-dollar industry, and they don't get to reap the benefits. It'll be a huge game changer.
The NCAA, which generates huge profits for schools but little to no compensation to players, also dealt a blow by a Supreme Court ruling that the organization cannot bar athletes from receiving education-related benefits. Oregon Ducks player Sedona Prince has long been fighting for the rights of student athletes.
I really want to push, for us to be treated like adults and to have this freedom of we can now do what we want with our brands.
Okay. And our thanks to Alex for that. Now to the new investigative report from 538 and the booming legal marijuana business, detailing claims of corruption in some testing labs driven by the demand for THC. ABC's Will Reeve has more.
Legal marijuana is growing in the U.S. It's a $17 billion a year business. But according to an investigative report by 538, the industry is rife with fraud, and consumers may be getting ripped off.
Consumers are looking for as much THC as they can get, which is creating financial rewards for having more THC in products. And that's also creating some really perverse incentives in the market to fraudulently inflate how much THC is actually in that product.
THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, is a psychoactive compound found in cannabis. It's what helps get you high.
Because retailers know that consumers equate THC
with highness, right? And they can charge more to give more, is the theory?
Exactly. The idea with a lot of consumers is that they're getting more value, more bang for their buck. But there's a problem, right? When we can't trust the potencies on those labels, it creates problems on the whole market.
But 538 contributor Lester Black says its reputation as the most important part of your pot is overblown.
There's over 100 other active compounds in the plant that affect how you get high when you consume cannabis.
Black's investigation found that certain labs across a number of states required to test cannabis on legal farms before it can make its way to the marketplace have been caught inflating their numbers on THC potency, passing moldy cannabis as safe, and even making up results.
Why would a lab doctor the results? They're not selling the product.
The lab's customer is the farm. So if the lab's giving a lot of really high potent results to the farm's going to keep coming back to that lab and giving them thousands or really millions of dollars.
How confident should an average consumer walking into a legal cannabis shop feel in the product that they're buying in terms of its accuracy on the label?
I would not be confident at all about the accuracy on any label at a legal cannabis shop in really any state in this country.
And still to come, is this flying car our future? And more on the battle over the Britney Spears conservatorship straight ahead.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Muir, #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast. 2020, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues, The Hunt. True crime, 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart that he did this.
It's the time of suspicion. The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're going to move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Well, we're tracking several international headlines at this hour. Yet another horrifying discovery. 182 human remains found near a former residential school that housed Indigenous children taken from their families in Canada. This all happened following a recent report that more than 800 unmarked graves of children were discovered. The Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops says Pope Francis has agreed to meet with Indigenous survivors in December and apologize for the Catholic Church's role in the abuse and deaths. A woman has been arrested for causing this wild crash during the Tour de France after jumping in front of the cyclists. The crash caused 3 players to withdraw from the tournament. French authorities say that they are questioning the woman and will provide more information tomorrow. Unusually cold weather has brought snow to Brazil, a country better known for its sunshine and beach life. Residents enjoying 3 days of the white stuff as rare frigid temps will continue through the week, but apparently no snow is expected after that. And now the wild twist in the Britney Spears conservatorship case. In legal filings, Britney's father, Jamie, has asked the court to investigate Britney's jaw-dropping claims last week that she's being abused and enslaved by the conservatorship she's been under for 13 years. Jamie, once in control of multiple aspects of his daughter's life, now oversees only her money and business dealings along with a financial firm, while a court-appointed professional makes personal decisions for the singer. To help us unpack what's happening in this case, as of now, we bring in family law attorney Christopher Melcher, who represents Kanye West, among many other celebrities. So, Christopher, let's get right to it. Britney made clear that she wants out of this conservatorship. We heard it in the hearing. She compared it to enslavement, and she detailed how even her decisions about birth control and getting married were made by her father. If Britney is telling the truth, does this seem like an appropriate conservatorship, or do you think these allegations deserve further investigation?
They absolutely need investigation. It never made sense that she had a conservatorship for so long. Maybe 13 years ago, when she had a lot of difficulties with the paparazzi, she needed help then for sure. But all these years later, it was never clear to us why she would need this level of control. She's an adult. She works. Why would she need another adult, or now series of adults, to control the most personal aspects of her life? That never made sense, and it certainly doesn't make sense after listening to her statement last week.
And what do you make of Jamie's new calls for the court to investigate Britney's claims, especially when he's been painted as one of the most controlling of all?
I was surprised by his recent filing. Jamie is in full damage control mode now, where he's stated that he's not responsible for anything that's happened recently to her because he's not even speaking to her. He claims that he's been cut off from communication. Well, how can somebody protect Britney when they're not even talking to her? Of course they can't. The other thing that Jamie raised in his paperwork is that Britney's court-appointed lawyer may not be serving her interests now that Jamie's accusing. And also Jamie's saying that the conservator who's making decisions for Britney's medical care was never properly appointed. And Jamie's citing the paperwork that was done 2 years ago under his watch. And I wonder, why is he bringing it up now? Why didn't he raise these issues 2 years ago?
So what do you think? Is Britney likely to escape this legal arrangement if that's what she wants?
Well, I think that there should be some lifting of the restrictions. What she's under, how she described it, not being able to marry, being able to decide whether to have a child, all these financial decisions being made for her. Certainly some of those, if not all of those, can be lifted. We heard her communicate in court for almost a half hour last week. That didn't sound like somebody who was unable to care for themselves. And to me, to be under a conservatorship, we should be able to tell within moments of talking to this individual that they're unable to protect themselves. We didn't see that last week, so I think she has a good chance of it.
So, Christopher, finally, what do you think the impact has been of the so-called Free Britney movement on this case?
It's an absolute victory for the movement. It's really the power of love that all these fans have had that show up at these hearings on social media that have brought light to this problem. And so there's going to be further allegations here that are going to be investigated now. There's no hiding from it. And really, we're seeing the conservators now pointing fingers at each other. It's all because of the pressure and attention that was brought on the conservatorship. For the last 13 years, we weren't looking at it. Now we are, and it's because of her fans.
Christopher Melcher, thanks for your perspective. And before we go tonight, the image of the day, and we are one step closer to becoming the Jetsons, maybe. This prototype air car is said to have completed the 35-minute flight between airports in Slovakia. That hybrid has a BMW engine, by the way, runs on regular gas. It takes about 2.5 minutes to transform from a plane into wheels, or vice versa. Pretty darn cool. And finally tonight, ABC Strong, a tribute to someone we must celebrate, because for 48 years here at ABC News, he has had our backs, facts, beats, and broadcasts covered. From desk assistant to our D.C. desk king, Tom Shine knows his politics, 10 presidents, and all things Capitol Hill. We knew where to go for the scoop, and his emails were legendary. Just when you thought a hearing on the Hill may not break any news, well, you would read Tom's email and be inspired to cover it. But you see, that's what makes Tom a great journalist. He knows how important the people are to the story. He's an advocate for what is right, protecting our democracy, and just all things good. And not surprising for the man that thought he was going to be a priest, but instead blessed all of us, his news flock. And believe me, we all followed him and respected him. Tom Shine set the example of what it means to have integrity and heart in a business that needs that more every day. May retirement bless you, Tom, and your beautiful wife, Mary Ray. That's our show for tonight. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for joining us.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward